You know, showing up and taking it easy. Where I want to go with this next 3 weeks actually is inviting us to realize that our very presence, when we get out of our own way, our very presence is an inspiration and a light to others, that we don't have to always have a list of things we need to accomplish so that we will measure up or so that we'll be doing enough good in the world. Those are all worthy things, of course. But I'm realizing, too, that the spiritual teachers through the ages have said, basically, you got it in you. Let it out. Let it shine. So the theme for the whole month of June is shine. Just show up and shine. And that song said it so well. And it's not complicated. Shine, show up and shine. It's not complicated. How many of us, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but tend to complicate things. Make it like, that's a great idea. Now let me go home and journal my list of things to do in order so I can show up and shine. I mean, that's kind of how, and then we complicate it and then kind of get tired thinking about it. Now, I know that's not true for everybody, but there's this tendency to make it a bigger deal than it is. Like the song said, maybe I don't have to push so hard. One breath at a time, straight from the heart. You never know what can happen. You never know what might be if I make room for a miracle to show up in me. So today is going to be simply shine. It's not that complicated. Next week I'm going to talk about shining your truth. And then the third week will be shining in the dark times. You know, we close our service with this little light of mine. I'm going to let it shine. So when you sing it today, just pay attention again. The operative word is let. And I can see that when we close our time together with that song, your light is shining. It just does come out. I love that song because it evokes that. So the word is let it shine. It's not a burdensome, rigorous chore. You don't need a college degree, you don't need a particular pedigree, and you don't even need a rechargeable battery to shine. You have it. You are it. It's like the story of the little girl who came home to tell her mom about her part in the Christmas play. And she was so excited, and her mom said, well, what part did you get? And she said, well, I am the Star of Bethlehem. And her mom asked her, well, what do you do in that part? And her daughter said, well, I just stand there and I shine. I just stand there and I shine. That's what I'm talking about. Simply shine. It's not complicated. Let's not underestimate the impact of our letting our light shine, of shining our presence. And let's not overestimate its complexity. These are troubling and chaotic, challenging times. I mean, that's code for these are interesting times. But you would agree, wouldn't you? I mean, these are some pretty challenging times we're living in. And we look at the world around us and we can say, oh, I feel helpless. There's so much I feel I should do, and yet I feel so overwhelmed. I don't know where to begin, and it looks like nobody cares. It looks like nobody's doing anything. Kind of like the Peanuts cartoon. Remember Peanuts? Charles Schulz's cartoon strip. And Lucy asked Charlie Brown, the great philosopher, asked him this deep philosophical question. She said, Charlie, why do you think we are put here on earth? And Charlie Brown said, well, we're put here to make others happy. And Lucy pondered this for a moment and then asked, well, what are the others put here for? We and those others are put here to shine our light to and it does bring happiness to us and to those who witness that. Spiritual teachers through the ages, as I said, have told us to shine our light. They've told us that wherever there is darkness, discouragement, suffering, despair, and you can make a list this long, when there is all of that darkness, the spiritual leaders and teachers of the centuries have not said, go bring more darkness. What do they say? They say, bring light. Respond to the darkness with light. Their message is always about light. And the beautiful thing is about light, it is so powerful. And yet it's not pushy. It's not pushy. And darkness never overpowers light. You can have the darkest room and you light a candle, and the darkness starts to dissipate. The darkness, the candle never says, too dark, can't light. Darkness never overpowers the light. Ernest Holmes, the architect of our philosophy, sort of drew an analogy about this in one of his books, This Thing Called You. And here's what he said about light and darkness. He said, when the first house was lighted with electricity, the darkness didn't groan and say, oh, I've been dark for so long. How long has it been, and how ignorant have been those people who have permitted the darkness, what grievous mistakes they have made. He said, in this dark room before the light, he said, there were no devious paths other than the introduction of the light. Flip a light switch. He said, there was no action then following up of the darkness upon the light. He said, the light merely exclaimed, behold, I come, and the darkness disappeared. Basically, what he was saying in his 1940s way was what we know. Go into a dark room, flip a switch, and on goes the light. I mean, there's no struggle between the darkness holding a resentment or judging or just wait a minute. You got to do some things before the light overcomes, dissipates the darkness. Here's an example, a wonderful story. In fact, I have four really good stories for you today. But one is about responding to the darkness with light. Now, darkness can be a whole range of things in our lives, in our world. But this one is about a retired pharmacist in England, and he has collected 120,000 cigarette butts from the streets of a resort town so that he can turn them into works of anti-smoking art and cleaning up, of course, just so that he can clean up the environment. That is his passion. He uses up to 8,000 cigarette butts to create these mosaic masterpieces, carrying these messages that warn against smoking and also are about cleaning up the environment. And he calls his artwork Significant Art, CIG-NIFICANT art, Significant Art. He said, people don't realize that the cigarette filters are plastic. People tend to evidently think they're cotton. So he spends his weekdays walking around this seaside resort of Blackpool, England, to clear the streets of this plastic pollutant. And we know plastic is devastating to the environment. And to encourage businesses to install cigarette disposal bins. And since he started this voluntary cleanup mission just 3 months ago, he has created around 50 works of art with anti-smoking and anti-littering messages. And they're gorgeous. I saw them online, and they look like mosaics, truly. He said, I want to make a real difference. Blackpool has 11 to 13 million visitors a year. So he's making a statement here to a lot of folks. And his mission now is to open a gallery of his art to showcase his work and spread his message. He said, my target is to eliminate every cigarette butt from the streets of Blackpool, and Blackpool will lead the world in showing how it can be done, meeting darkness with something light, something creative, something positive. That's an example of responding to the darkness by letting his light shine. Something started out so very simple. So how might this show up for you and me in our busy daily living? Well, Often we will ask ourselves, what should I do? And I invite you instead to ask, what is mine to do? Because that will put you in touch with your inner light. That's something that just wants to shine out of you. What is mine to do? And realize that the answer you may not get a full-blown project that'll come to mind. So then take the answer as just show up and shine. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Show up and be you. Show up and bring your whole self to your day, to whomever is in front of you, to whatever is around you. And I was thinking about this, and the many people in my life who provide various services, as we all have. We've got people we go to for the dry cleaning, and people that come and fix the air conditioning, and various therapists, and people who take care of our cosmetic glamorizing, all of those things. And I thought, everyone in my life who's kind of like, who does these various services, lets their light shine. I think about, and how does that feel? How do I see that? Well, just the simple contact with making an appointment and showing up for whatever is going to be done. And I feel better. I feel uplifted. Why? Because somehow in their way, they're not in with an agenda. They're just there letting their whole self be present. That's letting your light shine. And so I gave thanks for that. I thought, wow, I am so blessed. And I invite you to do that as you go through your week. Instead of us thinking about all the cranky people out there, all the people you can't, you know the lines you hear. You can't get good service. You can't trust anybody. And Lord, if you get on the phone and get put on hold, you know how we go immediately to the dark place. And I'm telling you that as we start allowing people's light to shine, you'll find that in these places, people are going to amaze you, because we all have that light in us. And so then you can let your light shine. So that's as simple as it is. Author Victoria Moran said, if you only knew who you really are, you would be starstruck. Do not underestimate what you have in you. Here's how Dr. Ernest Holmes described it. He said, there's an irresistible potential, and I'm going to call it a light, pressing for its self-expression through everyone, and it is limitless. It is God in us. If you only knew who you are, you'd be starstruck. So we let our light shine by simply showing up, by simply being open to the moment, to what's right in front of us. Like this example from a mother who was taking her little boy shoe shopping. Now, that sounds simple enough, relatively speaking. If you've taken a child shoe shopping, I'm sure it has its interesting issues. But for this mother, it was much trickier because her son, who was 6 years old, his name was River, was autistic. And so she quickly realized when she got him into the shoe store that this bustling shoe store was going to be really stressful for him. And so when she found the employee to help with the shoes, she was so blessed to get a young man named Aaron. Now, her little boy, and if you've had experience with children who are autistic, you know, her son seemed like every other kid on the outside. But because of his autism, his senses were heightened. Compared to most people, noises would be louder, lights are brighter, smells are stronger, and he doesn't like strangers touching him. Very, very highly sensitized. Well, he needs these new shoes. And when they arrive at the shoe store, it's crowded, it's noisy, and already River was getting anxious. And his mom just knew the bustling store was going to trigger a meltdown. So that's when she asked Aaron if he could help. Now, Aaron was busy. He could have easily brushed her off or said, come back another time, another day. But he reacted differently. He let his light shine. He was present to the moment. He was present to what was in front of him. He immediately led River and his mom to a quiet staff room and hung a do not disturb sign on the door. And then he talked this little boy very calmly through each step of the shoe shopping what would be involved and what to expect, and then he patiently helped him try on shoe after shoe after shoe, till they get the right ones. And once they found the perfect pair, Aaron fast-tracked them right through the checkout line again, so they wouldn't have to wait and have this child be subjected to this environment. And as if that wasn't enough, he gave them his store number and his private number so that when they needed to come shoe shopping again, they could make an appointment, and he would come in before the store opened and take care of them in that way so that River wouldn't have to deal with the crowds. Aaron's help, his patience, his compassion, it had such a huge impact on this little boy. The mother is astounded at how gracefully River got through this experience. And so she wrote about it on the store's Facebook page, and it went viral. Huge impact. We talk about the ripple effect anyway, because everything is energy, so when you are shining your light and that energy field around you is uplifted, it touches people outwardly and outwardly and outwardly, and Facebook helps. She put it on Facebook, and at last count, the post had been liked by more than a couple 100,000 people, and it had been shared more than 28,000 times, all because Aaron, the shoe salesman, showed up in the moment and did what was in front of him to do with his whole self. He let his light shine. Jesus, the master teacher, said, "Let your light so shine before everyone, before all, that they may see your good works and glorify the Father in heaven." I take that last line to mean not so that they will see your good works and then worship a God in heaven, but that they will be inspired to their own highest and best, their own heaven within. And notice in that scripture passage, the order of how that is said is so wise. It doesn't say do a lot of good works so that people will see your light. And that's our human tendency, isn't it? To go out and do a lot of good things so and then maybe people will see how good-hearted we are. He says, no, first let your light shine, and it will shine through whatever you are doing. So then, he said, whatever good works you're doing are infused with that light that lifts and inspires other people to their own inner light. So why is this important? It's important to know because, again, we don't need to stress ourselves about, well, what's my list of good works? Again, I'm not saying don't have that list, but let's keep the priorities straight and realize that it's about letting your light shine through whatever you are doing. Edwin Gaines, the wonderful spiritual author and teacher, wrote, "Let your light shine so brightly before those around you that they see God in you. And seeing God in you, they will know then that God is in themselves as well." That's the point. Not to say I'm better than you, I'm shinier than you, I know I'm better, I'm more about God than you are. No. It's when you let your light shine, it evokes that same sense in others. Haven't you had that happen to you? I'm reversing it. Somebody else comes into your environment, your experience, your day, and their light so shines, and you might be having a kind of a difficult day or a blah day or maybe a good day even. But don't you always feel uplifted? Because they're letting their light shine. That's the first thing. This whole thing is kind of like dancing. I have a friend who used to take ballroom dancing. He was exquisite. And did he know the steps? Oh, it was like science. Now, his partner loved to dance, but he did what we call street dancing. So his partner and I, actually, we were both kind of, when we'd go somewhere, we'd go street dancing. Well, Mr. Ballroom Dancer was just so perfect. And that was something to be admired and applauded. But author Tama Keeves put it this way, and this applies not just to dancing, but to this whole idea of letting our light shine. She says, you don't need the steps if you have the moves. If you have the moves, if you're feeling the rhythm of who you are and how you can bring your whole self to whatever is in front of you or whomever is in front of you, your day, don't worry about those in the steps. They'll come. They will come. Here's an example of how simple that can be. And I'm going to share it in the way it was written. On the way home from the hospital last spring, as a family began the ascent into their suburban neighborhood, there were 2 yard signs with bold lettering that caught their eye. One said, "You are worthy of love." And another said, well, there are 3 signs actually. Another said, "Your mistakes don't define you." And the third said, "Never give up." You are worthy of love, your mistakes don't define you, and never give up. And as they drove in and out of the neighborhood, because they had someone in the hospital, so they had many painful weeks of this route, and they always saw those signs as kind of beams of hope. And one day, weeks later, the mother parked outside the lawn with the signs and went to the door and knocked. And she asked the owner to come outside, and then she started to just weep. Her 13-year-old son had attempted suicide that spring. And that's why they were going back and forth to the hospital. She said those signs were there the day that we brought him home. A woman named Amy Wolf is the one who created these signs. And she couldn't have imagined at that moment when she created those signs what would have happened. She had no idea. In fact, what happened is she had the idea about 2 years earlier when the idea to create yard signs popped into her mind. But you know how we do? She just kind of blew it off. No, that can't be. People would think they're silly. But the idea kept coming back. Have you ever had that happen? Something keeps nudging at you and nudging at you. Kept coming back, and she always set it aside. And then one day she was in a group discussion with some church friends, and they were discussing the alarming the rise in suicide rates among their community's young people. And there was something she came away with from that, which was, you cannot do nothing. You got to do something. And so she did something. She got a hold of a friend of hers who's a graphic designer, and she ordered 20 yard signs with the message, "Your mistakes don't define you. You're worthy of love. Don't give up." These were the 3 signs. And then when she got the signs, 20 signs is all, she and her husband packed their 2 kids in the car, and the whole family drove around town asking residents of busy streets if they'd be willing to display the signs in their yard. She said, "I had a moment that day of thinking, ooh, this is so stupid. No one cares about yard signs," she says with a laugh. But the response was so overwhelmingly positive, so positive that she started sharing the photos and the details, you guessed it, on Facebook. Well, soon hundreds were liking and sharing the post, and they were ordering the signs. And so she had to kick her project into high gear, building a website, establishing a system to handle all of the orders. And then she expanded it to card decals, stickers, wristbands, and cards, all of which she sells just at cost. Today, there are more than 1,500 of her yard signs in the United States and abroad, and she has placed orders for about 10,000 wristbands and 1,500 postcards, 2,500 stickers, and 400 decals. And she's heard from dozens of folks impacted by this simple gesture. Individuals who were feeling rejected, alone, lonely, lost, hopeless, bereft, in despair. And she says the beautiful thing about these signs is that it was the local suicide rates among the young people that prompted me to finally make the sign. She said, but truly, whatever the viewer is struggling with, the meaning is in the eye of the beholder. The fact that those 20 signs turned into a movement still amazes her. These signs are a reminder, she said, that anyone, anywhere, can make a difference. All you have to do is something. Simply shine. It is not complicated. And it can seem so small. It can seem so small when it starts out, picking up a few cigarette butts, making a few signs, shopping for shoes, helping a customer. You know, I have one more example of this that I want to share that moved me so. And it reminds me of the biblical passage that says, "A little child shall lead us." How many times have we seen what kids will do, and it's their wisdom and courage is such an inspiration. Well, this is about a little boy named Austin Perrine, and he's a superhero, but not your typical superhero. Oh, sure, he looks the part. He has his signature cape flapping against his blue shirt, kind of like Superman, I guess. And he even uses a catchy name for his heroic alter ego, President Austin. President Austin. And he has an arch nemesis, as all good heroes must. President Austin's foes are hunger and homelessness, and they are very real. But the story started with the family in the living room in Birmingham, Alabama. Austin and his father, TJ, were watching a program on Animal Planet about a mother panda who left her cubs. And I told them that the cubs would be homeless for a while, said TJ. And Austin didn't know what homelessness really meant. But he was sad and he wanted to know more. So the dad, seeing this as a teachable moment, took Austin to a local shelter that provided housing and food and other services for chronically homeless people. And as they drove by the red brick building, they saw a group of 25 homeless men standing on the street corner. And Austin said, "Dad, they look so sad. Can we take them some food and make them smile?" So that day, Austin had his saved-up allowance, and he took it to buy each of these men a Burger King sandwich, and he handed out the food himself. And seeing what their presence meant to the men at the shelter, Austin and TJ did it again. They came back the next week. And Austin again dipped into his piggy bank. Now, for 4 years old, he must have gotten a good allowance, I gotta say, wouldn't you? You doing the math? Austin again dipped into his piggy bank to buy those sandwiches, which he handed out along with his new catchphrase, "Don't forget to show love. Don't forget to show love." After that, he returned every week for 5 weeks, and word of his kindness started to spread through the social media and the national news outlets. In fact, I saw a video of him actually handing out the food, running. He was so excited. He'd take a bag and he'd run out and hand it to the people, and they loved it. Burger King got wind of this, and so they jumped aboard, and they agreed to donate $1,000 a month for an entire year toward this cause. And soon there were churches and shelters across the country began inviting little Austin to come and distribute food in other poverty-prone areas and to speak. He had visited at the time of this writing, 15 locations, including parts of Puerto Rico that were affected by Hurricane Maria. And before, when Austin and TJ could feed 25 to 50 people at a time, now, thanks to corporate and community support, they can feed 800 to 2,000 people at a time. Austin's passion, in fact, has now become his whole family's passion. After raising money through a GoFundMe page, Austin's mother established the Show Love Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting homelessness. And she serves as the president. And then Dad, TJ, who was a project manager for a hospital chain, left his job to oversee the public relations for that foundation full-time. And he is in talks with the city of Birmingham now to obtain that facility. The people that had owned the homeless facility had moved to another location, and he's in talks with them now to obtain that for Austin's initiative and not only offer food and shelter, but other medical and mental health care as a preventive against hunger and homelessness. As for President Austin, He continues to give out food and smiles and his inspirational messages. Don't forget to show love. Little child started out so small. So for you and me, let's bring it back again. I invite you to just simply shine. Just shine. It's not complicated. Those examples started so very small, and look at the impact. Not saying that what you do has to have exponential results. A lot of times we don't see them. Sometimes it's years later when we hear, when you were there, your light was shining. They might not use quite those words, and it impacted me. And you're thinking, I guess I was just there. I mean, it's just kind of, lend a hand or be present. That's what I'm talking about. That is God in action. We are the hands, the feet, the expression of God for our fellow human beings. So you're going to know, how should I shine? How can I shine? Well, it might be a simple, kind word, might be a helping hand, might be a smile, might be listening. It's being your authentic self. And another way to shine is to simply love your life. I think we had that line in your song, and when you are loving your life, loving life, and letting that radiate out, people can't help but be lifted, and that is a way of shining. And so Bob is going to anchor this with a song that says it all about loving your life, letting your light shine. And you're going to know the song. He might even let you sing along. Just feeling groovy. So try it this week. Shine. It's not that complicated. Thanks.